Good morning, everyone. I'm Stefan Pretorius. I'm the Group CTO for WPP. And I'm joined on stage this morning by Alex Doyon, who's the Chief Strategy Officer for Salesforce. I'm going to start by asking, for the people who don't work for Salesforce, how many people here know what Salesforce does and why they're important in our ecosystem? Hands up. Okay, we have the loyalists here. It's pretty good. So I think in a place like Cannes, where it's all about creativity and advertising and awards and so on, it's sometimes quite odd for people to see brands like Salesforce appear and have a presence. And so clearly we believe in Salesforce and we believe in the partnership. But I think I'd like to start the conversation just by asking Alex if you can maybe just explain the main territories where Salesforce plays today. I mean, what capabilities do you enable for brands that people aren't maybe aware of?
Yeah, well, thank you. First, thank you for having me here. It's a great pleasure to be on the beach with you.
Like home.
Well, like home. I'm French originally. I live in San Francisco, but I'm back in my home country, so it's always a pleasure. And to answer your question about Salesforce, Salesforce is the number one CRM. We do only one thing, which is CRM. And today, CRM is really about managing the entire customer experience. CRM has evolved over the years, and what's really changing in today's world is with the fourth industrial revolution is we're all connected. I mean, we have our phone with us all day long. The way we interact with our cars, our health, any part of our life is actually through digital platform. And Salesforce powers pretty much every step of your journey with any brands, from marketing to sales, to commerce, to service, to those native apps. So we provide products that really enable any business in the world to transform themselves as a digital platform. That's what Salesforce does.
You're really stretching the boundaries of what can be contained within CRM, right? Because I think, historically, obviously, CRM was a very defined marketing function, yes. And it was frankly not the sexiest marketing function. It was it was either B2B, so doing lead generation and things like that. But in the consumer space, CRM was kind of really one-to-one marketing, communicating with existing customers. You've expanded the sort of the umbrella of what you put under CRM absolutely massively. Both in terms of your capability, but also in terms of how you go to market and how you engage with consumers, right?
Yeah, no, clearly that's, I think, a big change around Salesforce and the brand. And why we're here actually at Cannes Lion is 20 years ago when we started Salesforce. It's exactly 20 years, actually, in May this year. Thank you, yeah. We were really a B2B business. What we were selling to our customers was sales automation, customer service, business to business. And about 6 years ago, we started really to expand very deeply into B2C by doing email automation, by doing e-commerce, by doing DMP, and now marketing analytics. So today we power the largest brands in the world in the B2C segment in terms of direct consumer access. So we store in the Salesforce database what we call the Customer 360 for the largest B2C business. We have the data of pretty much every piece of customer interaction, and that's really why our presence here at Lion is so important, because a lot of our customers are here to buy advertising, but they need also to connect all the data they have in Salesforce to their advertising and their brand reach to their consumer. The direct connection of consumer redefines the way your brand operates in that digital media space, and that's start to connect. The CIO, the CMO, the CDO are all kind of job titles that are connecting to each other, and that's why we're here, and that's why also the partnership with WPP.
And was that transition difficult to make? Because I think I remember very vividly there was a period in the marketplace where Salesforce started pitching B2C solutions, and the skeptics would say, well, they'll never make the transition because they only understand B2B. The software was designed for B2B; it wasn't designed for B2C. And I think then you had a couple of breakthroughs. You had breakthroughs with people like Unilever, breakthroughs with people like Adidas, and so you look back today and you can almost not believe that there was skepticism in the marketplace that you could support large-scale B2C customer databases and executions, right?
No, that's clearly a very successful transition we managed to make. I'm glad you called that out, which is we've been viewed for a long time as a B2B, and indeed B2C is a different territory. You're absolutely right. But something amazing happened to me actually last year at Dreamforce, where we are showing all those amazing brands, Marriott, Unilever, and someone came to me and said, you guys are way too B2C. I wish you would be more B2B. So I say, yes, we did it. And to go back to that statement is the way we did it was also through acquisitions, because you need to acquire the technology and the talents. So we started that journey almost 7 years ago. And 5 years ago with big acquisitions like ExactTarget, Commerce Cloud. So we spent probably close to $10 billion in acquisition in acquiring those stacks and technology and
some
talents.
Now. and some now.
Yeah. And to be able to operate at scale, an average day on Salesforce, we send 3 billion emails. Black Friday, we sent 20 billion emails. That's B2C scale. We power Black Friday on our Commerce Cloud. I mean, we process tens of millions of shopping carts on Black Friday on the Salesforce platform alone. And remember that behind every email, every shopping cart, there is a customer. There's a customer record. There is a set of data we are storing for our customers on Salesforce. That is data and intelligence that those customers can put at work with AI and data mining to power better reach to their customer, whether it's through advertising or more personalization on our platform. So we clearly closed the loop and delivered B2C at scale. Yeah, big transition.
And what I find fascinating is that there are so many, I guess, new economy brands or even maverick brands that use Salesforce to power their experiences, right? So I mean, everything that you experience here at Cannes Lions, from the registration process to, access to events,
is on Salesforce.
Runs on Salesforce. Can you talk a little bit about some of the other more interesting or unusual brands that use Salesforce to power their communities and do their customer engagement?
Oh, wow. So just, I think this is a great question, because a little bit about my personal journey with Salesforce. I joined Salesforce 10 years ago. I sold my business to Salesforce. And 10 years ago, when I sold my business, Salesforce was a 10-year-old company, about 800 million of revenue. And this year we're going to do between 16 and 17 billion. So clearly, in 10 years, a massive growth. And we were kind of in market company. We were one product, sales, and I sold my company to do customer service. But a year ago, and for 10 years, I built all the products that we are now offering to the market. And a year ago, I changed jobs, and 10 years building products, working for Mark Benioff is kind of an intense experience. So I say, well, I want to do something. Yeah. I want to do something else. I say, well, why don't you do strategy for me? And the first thing I did was to go and meet as many CEOs as I could from really different size of companies. And what's fascinating with Salesforce is we have a very unique vantage point about what's going on in the industry, because we are the arms dealer. We sell the technology that companies are using to transform themselves in digital. And what was also fascinating to me is the diversity of customers we were actually powering. So indeed, if you come to Cannes Lions, you register online, you get your badge printed. All those data are on Salesforce, by the way. So it's great, and I want to thank the organizers for using our platform.
You should do a barter deal with them, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Change for some advertising on the brand.
Right. You see, that's where we need to partner, because you need to help us see through that and push the brand. But the other brands we're working on are... what I love about the diversity of our brands is we can learn from each other. In fact, what's the most powerful part about Salesforce, and to answer your question, is not just selling to one brand, is actually what all those brands can bring to each other. And right now I'm engaged with a lot of different business of different size. You and I last night were talking about a great customer of Salesforce, which is a music band. So you would not expect that Metallica, like hard rock, heavy metal, they're playing
People
London.
still listen to Metallica. I learned.
I don't know who's the Metallica fan in the room. See, we have, hey, yeah.
No offense, sorry.
They run on Salesforce. It's amazing, actually. And I happen to know Lars and the whole team there. And when I sat down with them 2 years ago, they came to Dreamforce. And they saw Adidas explaining what they were doing on Salesforce, running their marketing, their commerce, their digital engagement. And Lars, who's a drummer, said, I want to be like that. I want to be like Adidas. I said, whoa, that's a big vision. So I sat down with him and looked at basically their vision for the band. And the whole vision was very clear. It's all about the reach to the fan community. And when we started to look at their numbers, it's actually the #1 social rock band with 65 million followers in social media. And they operate like a brand. I mean, they really operate like a brand. They have email marketing, they have a mobile app you can download, you can register, and they go engage you and sell you t-shirts and tickets and engagement, and the community get together. So they're kind of redefining the way any brand should work. Any brand should work like a band. And that's kind of a very unusual customer for us, but it's a very exciting customer because somehow they're kind of ahead of what a lot of brands should be doing, which is community marketing. You know, the way you attach yourself to a brand is because you feel part of a value system and a community marketing, and that's very exciting to be working with that type of customer. Another example for me...
Just quickly on
Go ahead.
On Metallica. I mean, so yesterday at our stream event on the island, Daniel Ek from Spotify spoke, and he made this comment that actually across the entire Spotify artist community, artists were moving from thinking about their work as transactional. So you spend 3 years making an album, you drop it, you make some money, you carry on, to far more of an engagement business where bands like Chainsmokers, for instance, drop new music every 3 or 4 weeks.
Exactly.
Because they realize that if they don't keep that kind of continuous engagement with their fans, they lose engagement, they lose fan base, and every time they have to kind of like rebuild it up. So it's sort of it's interesting how digitalization of media and platforms like Spotify is actually playing into this kind of concept as well.
So what you just say is very important, by the way. It's actually very important, which is what's happening in the music industry can be applied to many other industries, by the way. The first time I sat down with Lars Ulrich, he basically took his phone and said, music is shrinking. This is music today. And he showed his phone and he says, it's not about the albums sale anymore, it's about the streaming. We're consuming music in a different way, which means that the marketing is different. If you don't have clarity of your reach in YouTube, in social media, you're basically losing, and Spotify is kind of the commerce site now. It's where you sell your songs and reach to your customer. And one of the metric we actually really started to track with Metallica on Salesforce was the Spotify community, and which we doubled in a year because it was kind of the new metric. It's not album sales anymore, it's about Spotify and YouTube follower. But what you just said about the cycles have changed. You don't spend 3 years building an album and marketing the albums. It's constantly happening. Well, the exact same statement can be applied to retail. When you work with Adidas, Adidas is going to tell you it's Black Friday every day. It's Black Friday every day. And we started the journey with Adidas 4 years ago with something very interesting they call hype sales. You know, the Yeezys, probably some of you have Yeezy shoes, the Kanye West sneakers. And the way the shoes are sold, they are sold through a very specific process, which is, some people call that capsules or drops. Adidas call that hype sales, which is basically you drop the shoe at a given day, given time, limited supply. And you just sell it in an hour. It just like sells out in an hour. And then the months after, you sell another model, and people tee up to the site, wait in waiting rooms. I mean, it's a crazy infrastructure. The first time we did that 4 years ago, of course, it was chaos because the load on the systems, the reach, everything was chaos. 60% of the purchase were made by ATC, automated trading cards, which were a company trying to buy through robots the shoes to resell them aftermarket at a premium. So it was complete chaos for us 4 years ago. Now we do that pretty much every week. Now it's business as usual. And this is a machine where you need to obviously amplify in social media, the drop is coming, people tee up to the site, give you their email address to be in a waiting list. So it's a different funnel. And you can see here what's happening is the cycles are shorter. It's not about Black Friday anymore. It's about the drop. It's about the collaboration with an artist who have the social reach to drive the traffic to the brand. And it's obviously all the digital infrastructure you have behind to manage through the funnel that fan engagement. And now we are on the next level that if you already purchase a pair, then you have the loop back, which is the loyalty program, which is called the Creators Club at Adidas. If you buy shoes with Adidas, you become a creator. And you have different level of being a creator. And based on your level of being a creator, you can access those drops a day earlier than the average creator. And that's basically digital. And to power all those experiences, which are not about Black Friday or sales period, it's a completely different agenda. Of course, behind the scene, you need a very powerful digital platform. You need Salesforce.
Something like Salesforce.
And obviously great teams to help you implement those experiences like WPP.
But it's a really interesting point, right? Because I think everything you're describing is an entirely different way of thinking about brand building. You know, I mean, we're so used to thinking about brand building as, you know, CI and advertising and things like that. And, you know, in many of our businesses, we do brand building in retail. We do it, you know, in-store design. We even do product design. But actually, what you're talking about is a far more holistic view of customer experience design and customer experience and customer service imagination, which is maybe something which is not that well developed in the industry, right? So, I mean, how are you finding working with clients and with agencies and consultancies? I mean, where are the ideas coming from? I mean, are you having to generate and motivate a lot that for your clients? Is it coming from the product owners in the client, or are you finding some of these ideas coming out of the ecosystem?
So I'd like to start first on your statement on brand building, because I think it's probably the most challenging thing for a CEO right now, not CDO, CIO, CMO, but CEOs, is to have clarity on the brand. I think digital is redefining the concept of a brand, and not just for B2C, by the way. It's true for B2B businesses as well. And one thing that is happening with digital is we're not only all connected to brands, but we're all connected to each other. So we actually, as a community, have way more value in defining the brand than the brand itself. And that kind of something I've seen myself every day at Salesforce. At Salesforce, we have a learning platform where people go and learn the technology. And when they graduate from that learning platform, they get a sweatshirt called Trailblazer. The platform is called Trailhead. And when you graduate from Trailhead, you become a Trailblazer. And 3 years ago, it came to my face. I was at our user conference in San Francisco. 170,000 people showed up. And we were in the morning with Mark Benioff before the keynote, and we saw that sea of people coming with their Trailblazer t-shirts. It's like, wow, this is the brand. It's not Salesforce anymore. They are the brand. In fact, our marketing is to amplify those people. They are the brand. They are defining our values. Now we need to understand what are their values. What do they stand for as a community? And I think we started that journey 4 years ago. And when we started that journey, I realized that was probably the most powerful way to build up your brand is to amplify through social networks those trailblazers who are changing their career, who are changing their companies, who are a community. And as we got that clarity ourselves, I started to realize that our customers are going through that journey. There are different phases of their journey. We just mentioned Adidas. Adidas is a community. They call them the creator. They have the word, like we have the Trailblazer, they call them the creators. You take a company like Tesla. It's a community. When you drive a Tesla, you feel part of a brand. You go to social media. The other day, it was actually very interesting. The other day, someone on Twitter got his Tesla serviced. When you have a Tesla and you need to do the service, you call a Ranger from your mobile app, and there is a Tesla Ranger that shows up to your home and does the service for you. You can even drop a car, pick your car, get it serviced if it needs more complex service. And this person say, I loved at Tesla, I love it on Twitter, 70,000 likes, 70,000 likes. Just one guy who had, I think, 1,000 followers. So, someone with no social reach. But just had mentioned Tesla and how great was the experience to be serviced. And the whole community piled in and say, we love you. I say, whoa, that's community marketing right there. And I actually sent that tweet to one of my CMO friends with a big German car manufacturer. And I say, when is the last time you had a tweet with 70,000 likes? And how much did it cost you? They say, well, I don't know. That's community marketing right there. And I think there is something really important about brands. So I went through all those little stories because B2B, B2C, brands are becoming community. In fact, your influencers or even the nobodies who talk about your brands are defining your brand. The question is, for a CEO, can you define your brand in 4 words that is consistent and congruent with your community? Do you speak that language out there? Do you speak that language in your company with your employees? Because you know what? Your employees are part of that community. Do you speak that language with your partner? Are Salesforce and WPP, when they together are engaged with customers, speaking the same language, the same value set? The world is shifting. It's shifting at a pace with that free flow of information where the individual become more important than actually the institutional brand communication. And that's for us actually gold in our hands. But when you have that clarity that you need to do that work as a CEO, because if you don't have that clarity at the very top, you're actually losing traction on what is your brand. And that's, I think, the most fascinating part of what's happening actually in digital right now and branding.
I mean, it's a really fascinating point because it almost elevates the business strategy to a philosophy about growth. And you know, what you're saying is that open businesses, you know, and we kind of feel very passionate about this in the new WPP. Open is probably the most prominent value in our sort of three stated values. You know, we believe, like you, that open businesses grow faster and they grow better. And by empowering people and by distributing innovation and by making your communities part of your brand, you become ultimately more robust and more successful. So it's a sort of it's maybe slightly counterintuitive for people who like control, who like, you know, definition, who don't like surprises. But, you know, ultimately it seems to be a better approach. Would you agree?
You can't control the crowd. That's the problem. And somehow what you just say is very powerful, by the way. You can't really control your brand when you shift to community marketing. But you need clarity about your core values. And that's where, for me, I'm so excited about the partnership and all the things we're doing, because Salesforce, as I say, we provide the technology. So we provide everything for our customer to become digital, from communities, commerce, marketing, DMPs, marketing analytics. But it's way outside our league to advise and help our customer to really define their brand and build that strategy. We need to be together in this because the world is shifting. It's not just about articulating a campaign. It's deeper than that. What's happening out there is very strategic. It's very deep. Yeah. And my biggest surprise shifting from product to strategy at Salesforce was the fact that digital was a C-suite agenda. Yeah. I'm amazed by the level of CEOs. Just myself in that current role, last year I met 130 CEOs who asked me to come and help them get that clarity. And I was like really blown away by the fact that the world, and we're talking big companies in healthcare, in automotive, in retail, in consumer goods, where clearly right now the race is on. The world is shifting at a pace where you indeed, as a CEO, if you have been a good operator for the past 30 years, being just a good operator for the next 30 years is not good enough. You need to be a leader, you need clarity on your brand, and that's where you need really strong partners at the technology level, but also at the branding, at the communication level, to be able to operate the shift of your company products and services in the new world.
Yeah. So I'm not going to let you get away with not answering the previous question,
okay.
which was where are those ideas coming from? So, you know, if you think about the ecosystem and yes. when you're engaging with these clients, which are frankly our common clients,
yes.
Are they generating those new experience ideas, the new service ideas internally? Are they looking to consultancies? Are they looking to agencies? You know, where and frankly, is there a white space, right? Is it something that you feel is still wide open and someone with better people, better ideas, better methodologies still has a huge opportunity?
I think we are all opening new doors. The reality, I think, is we're living in a world where digital is opening new doors. We're probably 5 years into really those transformations with a lot of companies. And I think we're learning. I think that's where the collaboration, where those ideas are coming from. I think those ideas are happening through conference like here, where we all get together. And I think for me at Salesforce, for example, I want to answer how we build our products, because our products are as good as helping our customer implement their ideas. And it's really through real-time agility, short-term projects that we build. There is a lot of trial and error in today's world. The cycles are very short. I mean, if you look at Salesforce, we push new products to the market every 4 months. That's our product cycle. Do we know what's our roadmap for the next 5 years? Of course not. We know actually our roadmap for the next 12 months in terms of technology. But beyond that, it's really collaboration. And that's why it's so important to be in locksteps about really having those short cycles and innovation cycles with our customers, and having being analytics driven about what works, what doesn't work in terms of exploring new territories. What's very important at the end is you can't succeed alone. That's the most important thing. Where I see companies fail or running a lack of ideas is when they basically want to implement everything on their own. They want to build a technology stack, they want to control their brand, and they want to basically run everything. I think what's happening is if you do sneakers, you're good at this. Just make sure you have the best one, the most differentiated one, the best brand value, and then you need to partner with technology vendors like Salesforce, companies like WPP to really help you execute. I think the collaboration is really the best ideation process today.
Well, and if you think about a campaign or a product like Glitch, right? Glitch is the second largest football boot sold by Adidas. That came out of a strategic insight out of one of the WPP agencies working with them, which was that the informal, the non-league football market was really big, and that there was an opportunity for an entirely new product to be designed that was highly customized, only sold through social media, dropped at local kind of urban football environments, and that thing is an absolute radical success, right? But I mean, it really is that kind of collaboration of
exactly.
Consumer strategic insight, human behavioral insight that led to product innovation, that led to an engagement innovation that was completely radical for them. And there's no advertising whatsoever on Glitch. It's the number 2 boot in the world for them by sales, right?
And behind the scene, as you guys define that strategy and that play, we work on the technology, because what's interesting in that particular example, there's always a dual a play, which is B2C, B2B, which is another big thing happening right now in the industry, which is the convergence of B2B, B2C, because most of those consumer brands used to be 100% B2B. They were selling through wholesale or stores, and now they're selling direct. And there's a combination of the two. And then you orchestrate those two, so you don't disenfranchise your channels. And of course, behind the scene, there is actually tons of technology to make sure that the resellers have the inventory, collaborate with the brands, are actually acting as a community. And we build the products along the way to support those initiatives. And what's very exciting is we are basically embedding into the core Salesforce the product any customer can purchase, those capabilities as we innovate every 4 months. And very often I'm asked, well, but how do customers let you put into your product things you build to support their differentiation? And I say, well, Adidas knows we're going to put that in the product. In fact, they want us to do that out of the box on our product. They know it's specific for them for the next 8 months. But you know what? In 8 months, they know everybody will be doing it. They'll be to the next train. And actually, what they want is make sure it's standard. They don't want us to build a specific product for them. They want us to build our platform that supports ahead of time what they want to do, but continue to innovate together. That's where the collaboration is actually very powerful for me. And under that, the underlying is really, you can't operate on your own right now in this world. You need to be partnering. It's true for us, it's true for you, it's true for our joint customers. It's really a community and an ecosystem.
Absolutely. So I want to shift gears a little bit. There are a couple of technologists in the audience, and being CTO, I'm not going to let the opportunity go not to ask you some technology questions. So, this whole idea of openness, enabling ecosystems, enabling communities, it's very powerful from a kind of a customer experience and brand perspective. But clearly, you also have to reflect that in your technology strategy. And I think, as we sort of, continue to evolve our technology consulting capability and our systems integration capability at WPP, we're obviously tracking all the various, major partners in the world and working with them all very closely. And so, what I've kind of seen at Salesforce is obviously an initial wave of functionality bolt-on, I would say. So you started with Sales Cloud, you added Service Cloud, Commerce Cloud, Marketing Cloud, etc. And now, more recently, significant investments. I mean, really major investments in more enterprise technology layers. MuleSoft, firstly, which is a sort of integration as a service platform that's probably one of the market-leading integration service hubs in the world. And then obviously Datorama, and more recently the one you can't talk about yet, Tableau. But so, can you maybe just comment on as you've been going through that journey, and you were responsible for a large part of it directly, how were you thinking about the outcomes in terms of how you want to operate in the ecosystem, in terms of what you were buying, how you were designing it, and frankly, how you were architecting and putting it together? Because it's quite different from what other people are doing in the marketplace, right?
So we have one strategy at Salesforce, which is to be the #1 CRM, which we are. And CRM as a segment is actually 5 years ago became the largest IT spending across all segments. I mean, if you take ERP, database, every segment is actually now smaller than CRM.
But CRM including commerce platforms,
everything that connects to basically CRM is actually pretty much every capabilities you have in your information system that is connected to the customer.
You've never thought about renaming it, just to kind of
I know it sounds
make it
very
a super
90s.
category.
The 90s are calling back, but that's what the analysts got stuck in the name CRM, customer relationship management, which encompass marketing technologies, commerce technologies, customer service technologies, all the technologies that basically touch the customer record. Right now, this is the number one IT spending, the largest market. It's the fastest growing market in IT, growing 15% a year. And for one single reason, you know, in the 2000s, in the 90s, the biggest market was ERP because the most important asset for a company was the inventory, the cash. So they were buying those ERP platform to manage their assets. CRM is about the customer. And it's now becoming the number one IT market because the most important asset in digital for any company of any segment is the customer record. Knowing your customer. There's nothing more important than knowing your customers. And it's true for a car manufacturer, which historically didn't know their customers. They knew their dealers, but not their customers. It's true for Adidas, who's selling shoes. It's true for any industry. So CRM is very strategic, number one IT spending. So what does it mean for us? Your question is about the technology. Well, our technology is really about building the most complete platform so our customers can really build what we call the Customer 360, which is the most complete real-time database of customer information that they can activate at any time. Now, with that, a customer record is not something monolithic. It's not one database. In fact, it will never be, because you have zillions of subsystems. And that's where the MuleSoft acquisition was very important, because MuleSoft basically enables you to enrich the Salesforce Customer 360 with data coming from other systems in real time through APIs. So it's a very different way to look at integration. Historically, integration was moving data back and forth between systems. MuleSoft is actually exposing data through APIs, so you can expose those data to your internal business processes, but you can also expose your data to your customer apps. So you can access from one single point as a customer everything about yourself with a given app or a given brand. So MuleSoft was a very important element of our strategy.
So just to pause on that for a second. So is the idea that MuleSoft would both enable the external, the non-Salesforce ecosystem of applications and databases and so on with Salesforce applications, but also that MuleSoft would drive the Salesforce to Salesforce integration between, say, Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Commerce Cloud?
Yes, of course. MuleSoft has an internal value, which is to bridge, and also we have obviously integrated all our clouds. The goal is obviously to connect all those clouds together. I'm going to take a very simple example. Last year, we launched a service bot. So with Salesforce today, if you go to, I encourage everybody, you can go to the adidas.com website or Adidas native app. If you want to start chatting with an agent, in fact, you're not chatting with an agent, you're chatting with Adibot. Adibot is actually an AI robot. But Adibot works inside Salesforce. And when you start asking Adibot, say, hey, hello, I'm Alex. And he's going to ask a couple of questions about yourself. And he's going to tell you, are you texting about this order? In fact, Adibot is going from MuleSoft to all the different subsystems. He knows your order. He knows the last time you were on a website. He knows everything. It's a bot. And the way he knows all those real-time information about you is from MuleSoft, actually. He's operating completely integrated into your world. He knows everything about you. He actually can change the color, the size, without even having a human involved, because he has this API in real time connecting all the subsystems. So he's doing service. This bot is a service agent. Is logging a ticket. And if he's at some point starting to be confused, because what you're asking is really too hard for him, because it's AI, he knows at some point that his confidence score is going down. He says, oh, wow, I'm confused. He's actually going to transfer you to an agent, a real agent, who's going to take over in a call center. But he deflected a lot of the call. And the agent's going to see all your interaction with Adibot and take over from that point. That simple interaction, which happens to us, actually it happened to me last week. I had the wrong size shoe ordered for my wife on Adidas, and Adibot changed the size for me. And then I wanted to talk to an agent because I was in France and the order was in US, so it was a different level for Adibot. And I went through that seamless interaction. When you look at what's happening behind the scene, You have everything connected. Sales, service, commerce, connected, and even marketing, because the last thing you want is to drop an email campaign in the middle of a service interaction to a customer. And all that is done indeed through that MuleSoft layer where all those pieces are connecting to each other.
I mean, it's a great example, right? And I think what it illustrates is this idea that marketing technology is now enterprise technology. So, there was this kind of world in maybe, the late 90s, early 2000s where, marketing technology, whether it be ad servers or, content management platforms or email marketing systems or, what of those social management and monitoring tools were really kind of like bolt-ons that the marketing teams licensed themselves and used independently of the rest of the enterprise. I mean, these kind of tools were standalone capabilities that the marketing teams and maybe the agencies used completely independently of enterprise technology. Now, to execute the kind of service you just described there, it's a completely integrated offering, and frankly, it has to be tightly integrated into the entire enterprise IT environment. So the question kind of is I mean, is there a skill shortage? Is there kind of an engagement challenge in that? Because you effectively have to engage the CMO, the CDO, the CIO, and you have to have partners and vendors who can effectively think and execute across that entire spectrum. I mean, we're talking about extremely multi-talented, extremely multidisciplinary kind of executions, right?
So you really have your question raised two answers for me. On one hand is obviously the fact that the complexity of the technology platform you need to operate on is really higher than 5 years ago, because under all those experience, it's not just about having data and doing a little bit personalization. There is a massive amount of AI, there's a massive amount of data mining, because to display, if you go to, for example, again, Adidas, if you search a product on Adidas, each of you will have a different answer based on your past navigation patterns, because obviously the screen is so small, you want the first 5 products to be displayed to be highly relevant. Massive AI at scale, real time happening. So all that technology barrier to entry is getting higher and it's going to continue to go higher as we capture more data for customers, which means that for a lot of our own customers, joint customers, this is a race, and the question is, do you need to have data scientists? Do you need to have more programmers within the customers? And the short answer is no. That's the whole point of Salesforce, is our job is to take care of that complexity and to really lower the barrier to entry, and really enable companies to focus on their core business process, leveraging the technology. The second part of the answer is the jobs are changing, and that's a fact. That's a fact that digital is destroying jobs, but it's also creating jobs. And actually, I'm part of this work group with President Macron in France called Tech for Good, where we're looking at actually those trends, and I'm on the education track, where we work with the French government about the future of jobs and what should be the education. And what's clearly happening is, so far, all the metrics we got from McKinsey is actually in every industry, retail, healthcare, we are creating jobs. Digital is creating jobs. The net is job creation. Of course, some jobs are disappearing with AI, with automation, but new jobs are being created. What are those new jobs? Well, in digital, they have names. You have digital marketers. There is like 10 subcategories of digital marketers, e-commerce merchandisers, sales operations in B2B. I mean, there's a lot of jobs that are being created to operate those digital platforms. And those jobs are not developers. They're not data scientists. They're actually people who know how to use the platforms, who are using data science. They understand what is a marketing campaign. They understand what is an e-commerce website, and they're entering the business rules and the strategies to operate those business rules. So then the question is, how do you train people on those jobs? And here it's a very important part of what we want to do at Salesforce is not only make the platform easy to onboard for everyone, but also coming with learning tools that are free. Yep. We recently made a survey with IDC. How many jobs are going to be created on Salesforce across all types of jobs?
All things being equal.
All things being equal. How many people, basically what's the size of the Salesforce economy, which is people finding jobs working on Salesforce. And in the next 3 years, 3.3 million jobs are going to be created on Salesforce. It's about 150,000 in France only. And those jobs are not developers' jobs.
Yep.
They are just the job that just went through digital marketing, e-commerce merchandiser, sales operation. These are real jobs in demand, in high demand. So we created a platform to basically reskill the workforce. That is a learning platform for free, but we also partner with a lot of non-profit organizations in many countries to make sure that we reach communities that today don't know those jobs exist. Because we believe it's also a huge opportunity for more diversity in tech, more diversity in digital marketing. I think we all face in all our industries, I mean, Lion is a good example where you see there is kind of a tech conference, there's still a diversity gap that we need to fix. And I think we have a fantastic opportunity in front of us with those new jobs being created, with those learning platforms, to bring on board people who today may feel disenfranchised by the digital transition of their business, and bring more gender diversity, more origin diversity. I mean, there is clearly an opportunity in front of us. We need to have clear in our mind that we can really reskill our current workforce, but we can also bring talents. And I'm working personally with a lot of non-profit organizations, for example, in France, like Open Classroom, like Social Builder, to really focus on the agenda of diversity in tech, diversity in digital. Just an example, Vivatech happen. Of course, it's not. It's operated by another digital agency, but on the Saturday, on the Saturday, we had a day open public, and we had a Salesforce booth there, and we said, well, we don't want to talk about Salesforce. We're going to give the booth to non-profit that are about female in digital, and it's called Social Builder. And we said the booth is going to be converted into 150 seats to learn the jobs of digital. And there are 900 people registered for 150 seats, only females, learning what job they can access with no development background in digital marketing, in e-commerce, in sales operation. There is a huge demand, and we need to unlock that door as well, because I think in front of us, together, we can create a lot of jobs. Those jobs exist, they are in high demand, and we just need to learn the tools. And we take care of simplifying the technology stack.
It's a far more optimistic way of thinking about the problem than talking about jobs being taken by AI, right? I mean, it's sort of not at all helpful.
The jobs are not destroyed by AI. The jobs are destroyed by us as consumer. We go the path of least resistance. We're going to take the easiest service. And of course, digital is making our life easier. So I think it's very important to know that we are the one destroying jobs in store because we buy from our phone. I mean, 70% of e-commerce traffic on Salesforce comes from mobile phone because, of course, it's easier. Wherever we are, we buy. This is the biggest store. For Adidas, this is the biggest store. So, of course, jobs in stores are disappearing or changing in nature. And new jobs are being created to operate these new ways of connecting with customers. The net is job creation. That's the most important. And the second most important is the net is not just developers. There's tons of jobs in digital media that are being created, and it is a platform for equality. And I think it's very important we continue to partner on creating a more diverse world in our industry.
Absolutely. Alex, I want to wrap up with a couple of quick fires for you. So this is something that Lindsay Patterson is fond of doing, and it's quite a nice way of kind of ending a discussion, right? So one-word answers, San Francisco or Cannes?
What do you think? Well, at least we can go for a swim here, because in San Francisco you can't swim, it's too cold. But it's such a beautiful place, so thanks for having me here.
So Cannes.
Yeah, okay. Cannes.
A couple of other ones.
And I speak the language here. I don't have an accent when I'm here. It's pretty cool.
A couple of other ones quickly for you. So in the context of public cloud, AWS or GCP?
It's a tough question. We love them all. It's all about customer success. So we really make sure, by the way, we operate well with those environments and support our customers in the best way.
I won't push you further. Alex, thank you very much.
Thank you, Stéphane. Thank you very much.